Hi, my name is Narasimha Reddy Bommaka. I'm a certified Scrum trainer with Scrum Alliance, and I've been helping folks learn Scrum and help them implement it in an effective way. And I guess we would have trained more than 20,000 professionals in last 9 to 10 years, and help them learn and implement that in an effective way. So I'm here today to talk about one question that many people ask me, right? I'm sure some of you might have heard this before. So one of the common questions I hear is, hey, what is waterfall versus agile, right? Before we get into that, I would say that's a wrong question to ask. Waterfall versus agile is a wrong question to ask, because waterfall is a process, whereas agile, I would say, is a mindset or a way of approaching things, a way of doing things. So I don't think you should compare a process versus a mindset. That's why I say it's a wrong question to ask. I know we are showing waterfall versus agile here, so that I'm showing it so that I'll tell you it's a wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is probably waterfall versus Scrum. That way you are comparing two different approaches to your project. So maybe you should ask waterfall versus Scrum instead of asking waterfall versus agile. So let's get into how do you approach a project differently in waterfall compared to approaching that in Scrum, right? So let's first understand at a high level, real quick, how we approach a project in waterfall, right? So waterfall is more a phased approach for your project, where it starts with spending some time at the beginning of the project, trying to understand what are we supposed to accomplish for the customer in the project. You call it as a requirement phase. Usually it results in some document where you try and list out whatever business wants in that document, called requirement document. It is followed by what is called as design phase, where you are analyzing the requirements collected in the previous phase, and try to come up with a design that you think is going to help cater to all these requirements. This phase also results in documentation, something called as design document. And once you are done with that, you start developing, and that's where the teams are working and developing the product, developing the solution that you promised to the customer at the beginning of the project, based on the requirements you collected and the design that you agreed upon. And so once the development is over, there is usually followed by a testing phase, where doing all sorts of testing, integration testing, regression, whatever different tests that you think make sense in that project. You're going to do that at the end of the project. Usually in this phase you get some bugs, some issues to fix. So there will be some back and forth between this development and testing, right? There will be some bugs identified, you go back, fix them, a few cycles of bug fixes and verifications, and once that is done, there is generally a working software or a product meeting the customer requirements, hopefully, and then you ship it to production, where it goes into sort of maintenance mode, right? That's how you typically work in a waterfall project. So now let's try and see how you work on such a project using Scrum, right? So in Scrum, first major difference I would say is that we no longer have phases, right? Unlike a phased approach in waterfall, we are going away from phased approach. Instead, the team is doing a bit of everything simultaneously. And I look at that as a vertical slice, right? So at the beginning of the project, there will be some time spent in setting up whatever is required to help the team work on the project. I call that as kickoff. So once that kickoff is over, unlike the phased approach in waterfall, here there's one cross-functional team in Scrum which is doing a bit of everything simultaneously. That's what we're trying to show with this circle. Other way of saying is, I say the vertical slice that work and do a bit of everything required. It could be design, understanding requirements, testing, development, whatever needs to be done to create potentially shippable working software. So that one cross-functional team is doing a bit of everything simultaneously every sprint to create working software by the end of the sprint. So I showed backlog here to kind of show, unlike a requirement document, we have something called as product backlog in Scrum, which has ordered list of features or functionalities that business wants, and team works in the order of the priority and do a bit of everything simultaneously every sprint and deliver working software or something that is good enough to go to production, a potentially shippable working software by the end of the sprint. So that's I would say a major difference, right? It's a phased approach, whereas here you are doing a bit of everything. So in waterfall, you don't you won't deliver any working software or value to the business until you come somewhere to this testing phase, right? So you're gonna go for few months in a bigger project without having delivering any value, whereas here, because you are taking a feature at a time and doing a bit of everything, you are delivering value continuously throughout the project starting from the first sprint, right? Another difference I would say is here you have separate teams doing separate things, right? So I call that as teams in silos. If you look at teams in Waterfall, they work in silos. You have a separate team for design, separate team for requirements, separate team for development, testing and stuff like that, whereas here in Scrum we have only one cross-functional team who has all the skill sets required for them to be able to deliver working software, and they are working together throughout the sprint to try and deliver potentially shippable working software by the end of the sprint. Okay, so summarizing, if somebody asks you going forward Waterfall versus Agile, tell them that's a wrong question to ask. Instead you should ask Waterfall versus Scrum. I hope you find it useful. If you need more details or on how to use Scrum in your projects, happy to help. We do classes, trainings regularly across different cities in India, so please look at staragile.com for details on next classes. Thank you. Bye bye.